say yes, Yahuwah. I will trust you and obey. When your Ruach speaks to me, with my whole heart I'll agree. And my answer will be yes, Yahuwah. I'll say yes, Yahuwah, to your will and to your way. I'll say yes, Yahuwah. I will trust you and obey. When your Ruach speaks to me, with my whole heart I'll agree. And my answer will be yes, Yahuwah. I'll say yes, Yahuwah, to your will and to your way. I'll say yes, Yahuwah. I will trust you and obey. When your Ruach speaks to me, with my whole heart I'll agree. And my answer will be yes, Yahuwah. I'll say yes, Yahuwah, to your will and to your way. I'll say yes, Yahuwah. I will trust you and obey. When your Ruach speaks to me, with my whole heart I'll agree. And my answer will be yes, Yahuwah. I'll say yes, Yahuwah, to your will and to your way. I'll say yes, Yahuwah. I will trust you and obey. When your Ruach speaks to me, with my whole heart I'll agree. And my answer will be yes, Yahuwah. I'll say yes, Yahuwah, to your will and to your way. I'll say yes, Yahuwah. I will trust you and obey. When your Ruach speaks to me, with my whole heart I'll agree. And my answer will be yes, Yahuwah. I'll say yes, Yahuwah, to your will and to your way. I'll say yes, Yahuwah. I will trust you and obey. When your Ruach speaks to me, with my whole heart I'll agree. And my answer will be yes, Yahuwah. I'll say yes, Yahuwah, to your will and to your way. I'll say yes, Yahuwah. I will trust you and obey. When your Ruach speaks to me, with my whole heart I'll agree. And my answer will be yes, Yahuwah. I'll say yes, Yahuwah, to your will and to your way. I'll say yes, Yahuwah. I will trust you and obey. When your Ruach speaks to me, with my whole heart I'll agree. And my answer will be yes, Yahuwah. I'll say yes, Yahuwah, to your will and to your way. I'll say yes, Yahuwah. I will trust you and obey. When your Ruach speaks to me, with my whole heart I'll agree. And my answer will be yes, Yahuwah. I'll say yes, Yahuwah, to your will and to your way. I'll say yes, trust you and obey. When your Ruach speaks to me, with my whole heart I'll agree, and my answer will be yes. Yahuwah. I'll say yes, Yahuwah, to your will and to your way. I'll say yes, Yahuwah. I will trust you and obey. When your Ruach speaks to me, with my whole heart I'll agree, and my answer will be yes, Yahuwah.
Shalom, shalom. We're back once again to bring you the conclusion to the matter as we're in chapter 30, and we're going to begin with we're going to go look at verse 25, and then we're going to move forward. I want to bring out some points real quick as we are looking at chapter 30, and we are looking at verses 25, and then we'll look at verse 27. We looked at verse 27, and we're going to look at verse 32. And the reason I want to go back because it's important to find out what was the determining factor of Yaakov leaving and also desiring to go home. There was two things. His Abba was his health was deteriorating really fast, and then also Raquel had now finally conceived, and so it is now basically according to the historians and according to custom, now she can go home because status was also predicated upon the Isha having a son or having a child. And so it's important that we understand that. After Raquel gave birth in verse 25, a woman's status in the marriage was not fully attained until she bore a son. In some contracts from the second millennium, a time limit is set after which she can be divorced, should her heir not be provided. Prior to Joseph's birth, it would have been inappropriate for Yaakov to leave with Raquel, since her status would be more secure with family in the area. So it was important that we also look and are able to see that these things did not come to pass until a son was brought forth. So those were things that were factors involved in this as well. So it wouldn't have been wise to just pick up and go because of her status. Her status had to be proven once she was given, once she had a son and was able to give Yaakov an heir, not from somebody else, but from her own body. Right. Now, when we look at verse 32, now this is where the wages come in, and this is important to understand too. He said, so he said, what shall I give you? And Yaakov said, you shall not give me anything. If you will do anything for me, I will again feed and keep your flock. So in other words, he's telling him, said, no, I don't want you to give me anything. Let me work for it. Let me go ahead and work this thing off. 32, he says, let me pass through all your flock to Yam, removing from there all the speckled and spotted sheep and all the brown ones among the lambs, and the spotted and speckled among the goats. And these shall be my wages. Because he wanted to make sure there was nothing else attached. And because Laban thought, okay, I got him now. And the reason I know I have him is because he's not going to pull that much out of there. Right. Now, according to, once again, the theologians, shepherds' wages in the ancient Near East were usually the byproducts of the herd, mostly a percentage of the wool and milk. Sometimes the shepherd would also get to keep a percentage of the new births. The percentage is not often stated in the text, but one text from Ishli indicates that the shepherd was allowed to keep 20%. Rather than using a percentage, Yaakov requests that his share be those that are marked in their coloring. The fat tail of the awasi, a fat tail sheep was most common in the region and was usually white. Goats were typically black, Deviations from these norms were relatively uncommon and would certainly have been less than 20% in normal circumstances. So when he told me, he said, okay, in other words, he thought he was getting over on him because he asked this thing and it was unusual for him to ask this. But Yaakov knew that he already had planned and strategized how he was going to make this thing come about. All right. So now when we look at verse 33, and we continue to read, and he says in verse 33, so my uprightness will answer for me in time to come. When the subject of my wages comes before you, everyone that is not speckled and spotted among the goats and brown among the lambs will be considered stolen if it is with me. And Laban said, oh, that it were according to your word. In other words, he really believes that he has him, and this is how he's going to basically get away without him having to give him anything, because it's almost like a person, being a novice and say, oh, he don't know what the world he doing. So he gonna be here and he really ain't gonna take nothing away because I don't see how he's gonna get that. And so in verse 35, we see, so he removed that yam, the male goats that were speckled and spotted, all the female goats that were speckled and spotted, every one that had some white in it, and all the brown ones among the lambs, and gave them into the land of his sons. So now by now his sons are older. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Then he put 3 days journey or three yamim's journey between himself and Yaakov, and Yaakov fed the rest of the Laban's flocks. And this is talking about, let's look at verse 25. This is talking about Laban gave into his sons. And so verse 36 says, then he puts 3 yamim journey between himself and Yaakov. So this is Laban who gave his sons these lambs. And then it says he put 3 days journey between himself and Yaakov fed the rest of the Laban's flocks. Now Yaakov took for himself rods of green poplar, and of the almond and chestnut etzim, peeled white strips in them, and exposed the white which was in the rods. And the rods which he had, in verse 38, had peeled, he set before the flocks in the gutters and the watering trough, where the flocks came to drink, so they should conceive when they came to drink. So he already, excuse me, he sees this, excuse me, as an opportunity for him to cultivate and make this thing happen in his esteem. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
All right. Verse 39 comes and it says, so the flocks conceived before the rods, and the flocks brought forth streaked, speckled, and spotted. He already knew what he was going to do. Even though Yaakov did some clever engineering, but the end result was by Yahuwah. And Yaakov recognized this and attributed it to power and not to his method. Very important that, once again, as we have stated, or as I have stated it numerous times, we should always give praise to Abba Yahuwah, regardless of how it comes about. Even though we may have the idea still came from him. So when it's all said and done, he's the one that gets the praise. He's the one that gets the esteem, because it is he who gives us, watch this, the power to get wealth. Right. And wealth comes many times through creative ideas, through interventions, and through different things that we're able to see these things manifest in our lives. So we know that he gave praise to Abba Yahuwah. 40 tells us then Yaakov separated the lambs and made the flocks face toward the street, and all the brown in the flock of Laban. But he put his own flocks by themselves and did not put them with Laban's flocks. So he separated it. And by him separating it, he knew that now his flocks are going to do what they need to do. Now, he did what he was supposed to do for Laban, but he also did what he needed to do for himself. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Verse 41, and it came to pass whenever the stronger livestock conceived that Yaakov placed the rods before the eyes of the livestock in the gutters, that they might conceive among the rods. In other words, those that were healthier and able, probably more, the younger flock that came and was able to conceive. So it's like if you conceive sickly animals, you're going to produce sickly animals. Right. It's even people When people are sickly or struggling with a sickness or a disease in their bodies, what ends up happening, they end up passing that same thing into the to their children and bloodstream or what have you, when that baby is being developed. And so it is important, very important, that we know if there's anything going on in our lives, and if it is, that we pray out who will bring forth healing, so it's not passed into our children's lives. Verse 42 and 43 reads, "But when the flocks were feeble, he did not put them in. So the feebler were Laban's, and the stronger Yaakov's." Now he was doing, once again, he wasn't tricking anybody. He told him these would be his wages. Now you have to understand, his 9 times out of 10, the reason why his flock is feeble and it is sickly, because this is something he's brought on himself. Are you following me? And these are probably the ones he's had for a length of time now. And so now, he's trying to be smart, and this thing ends up backfiring on him. Verse 43, "Thus the man became exceedingly prosperous and had large flocks, female and male servants, and camels and donkeys." Once again, because you have to understand this is his livelihood. So the more he accumulated, the more help he was able to get. And so in doing so, he's now beginning, that which is upon his life is beginning now to peak out, is beginning to show his status because of what's going on. And remember, Yahuwah told him, he said, "No matter where you go, I'll be with you." And he told him, he said, "If you give me clothes and you prosper me," he said, "then I will give you 10%. And he said, basically, I will live for you." So now we're seeing the the manifestation of what Abba Yahuwah said that he would do for him. Now we go into chapter 31. And let's read 8 verses, please. Excuse me.
Starting at chapter 31,
Mhm.
verse 1. Now Yaakov heard what Laban's sons were saying. Yaakov has taken all that was our Abba's and has built this wealth from what belonged to our Abba. Yaakov saw from Laban's face that his attitude toward him was not the same. Then Yahuwah said to him, "Go back to the land of your Abba's and to your family, and I will be with you." Yaakov had Rachel and Leah called to the field where his flocks were. He said to them, "I can see from your father's face that his attitude toward me is not the same, but Yahuwah of my Abba's has been with me. You know that I've worked hard for your Abba and that he has cheated me and changed my wages 10 times. But Yahuwah has not let him harm you. If he said the spotted sheep will be your wages, then all the sheep were born spotted. If he said the streaked sheep will be your wages, then all the sheep were born streaked." And it is so.
And it is so. Once again, these are the principal people of his home. So it's important that he talks to them so they don't think, because that is their Abba, that he's just trying to do something underhandedly, even though he's been treated in that manner. Are you following me?
Yes.
And so as we look at that, very important. Now, looking at verse 3, "Return, I will be with thee. Only when you return, but not here. I cannot cause my divine presence to rest upon you while you are associated with unclean men. I will be with you, guarding you from hurt and from hurt on the road." So now he is having the conversation with Abba Yahuwah. We look at 1, and it says, "Now Yaakov heard the words of Laban's son, saying, Yaakov has taken away all that was our Abba's, and from what was our Abba's he has acquired all this wealth." Now you have to understand, this is something they are fabricating, because he didn't take anything from them. Right. Are you hearing me? Yes. He worked for this. And this is how, once again, when you deal with people, sometimes people that are to the defile, all things are defiled; to the pure, all things are pure. And so here it is. They are saying among themselves that he's done this thing that is so wrong, but he has not. He's done what he said that he was going to do. Right. And Yaakov saw the countenance of Laban, and indeed it was not favorable toward him as before. Why? Because he's looking at what he has accumulated, and jealousy has set in his heart, which it was already there. It was already in his heart. Right. And so we see that. And then in verse 3, "Then Yahuwah said to Yaakov, return to the land of your Abbas and to your Mishpachot, and I will be with you." Now it's time for him to leave. Once again, it is time to establish himself in his relationship with Abba Yahuwah, and he cannot get it done there. So he now has to leave. And verse 4 says, "So Yaakov sent and called Raquel and Leah to the field to his flock. Um, and once again, you have to understand these are the reason they are called because these are his wives. Now you have to understand the reason why Raquel is called because she was supposed to be his principal wife, the first wife. Right. But because he was tricked, he still really didn't follow that pattern or that order. He followed the pattern that he first sought for, right. And that was that Raquel would be his principal or his first wife. Okay. Yeah. Now, Raquel first because she was the principal stay of his household. And so it having been for her sake that he entered into relationship with Laban. Leah's descendants admitted Raquel's precedence in as much as Boaz, a member of the tribe of Yehuda. Leah's son and his kinsmen said, Yahuwah make the woman like Raquel and like Leah. So once again, we see that they were regarded, but she was regarded first because she was actually the one that he desired to be with. Okay. Yes. So it's important that we see that. Now, when we look at verse 5, and said to them, I see your father's countenance, which is not favorable towards me as before, but the power of my Abba has been with me. And you know that with all my might, I have served your Abba. Once again, making sure that the relationship with them is 3D. Because these are his wives. And so because he's about to make this transition and this change, it has to be done in a manner that confusion does not come in and take place. Are y'all following? Yes. Very important that that's is founded upon those principles. Now, and the reason why is because if you already know, and I believe at this time in his life and in their lives, everything is kind of evened out a little bit. It's not as stringent. It's not as stressful as before because now they're able to deal with one another because their children are what? Older. Are you following me? Yes. Now, once again, it's important that we understand there is going to be another child that's going to come into the picture. Are y'all following me? But at this point, things are a little more calmer for them, which is important for us to see. And somebody would say, well, how do I take that and apply it to my life today? You have to understand that by any means necessary, according to the truth and instructions for our lives, it is important that we follow shalom with all men. And without Kadesh, no man shall see Abba Yahuwah. It is very important that we always seek to walk in that place, especially when you're dealing with your mishpachah. Your mishpachah. And so in order for it to be right when they left, he had to make sure that they understood that he was not stealing them away. Mm-hmm. It had to be understood that they were not in danger. And so that once again, when they got ready to mobilize, he would not have to be fighting against them. Are y'all following? Yes. Very important for us to understand that. Now, now he says, it is not towards me as before time. He thinks that all possession is, he thinks that all all I possess is his. And once again, because when he looked at it and his sons again and said, oh, he's taking what is mine. He didn't take what was theirs. He did what was his. And he worked rightfully for it. Right. And he says, the power of my Abba has been with me. Abba have given me what I now own, and I have taken not from him. And this is why he said, look, I'm not going to take anything, but I'm going to work this thing in the manner that it's supposed to be worked. Are you hearing me? Yes. He said 10 times. This is manem. Manem indicates a minimum of 10 times. Hence, 10 manem means at least 100 times. 10 is idiomatic and only signifies many times. So he basically, the whole time he was there, was taking advantage of him. It's almost like he wasn't going to let up. Mm-hmm. So when you're in conditions like that, it'll never be to your advantage. It'll always be to your disadvantage. Are y'all following? Yes. Verse 8, as we see, the speckle shall be thy wages. Originally, Laban promised him all the speckled and spotted and also the dark-colored sheep. Then he changed it to one kind only, speckled or spotted or ring-streaked. And yet every year the sheep bore the kind allotted to Yaakov without the aid of the rods. So once again, this is why he's able to say, look, this man every time keeps changing it. keeps changing it up. He keeps flipping the script on me. He keeps making this thing difficult when it shouldn't be. But once again, it's important that we understand when you're dealing with people that are treacherous and liars and thieves and so forth, you're not going to, that's what you're going to get out of them. When you get into a deal with them or when you come into contract with them, that is what you're going to get. Are you following me?
Yes.
Very important that we understand that. And so we have to really visualize this in that manner and look at it. How do I deal with it in my life? And now how do I take that and apply it now? We have to deal with people that are on the up and up. Because if you deal with people that are not, you're not going to get the results you want. And no matter how, we get that mentality, well, I'm trying to give them a chance. I really want to give them a chance. There's some people, if you know they have not been transformed and they're still that same person, you giving them a chance is not going to help it, especially if they have not changed on the inside. So that's important for us to understand. All right, let's begin at verse 9, please. Chapter 31, verse 9.
So power has taken away the livestock of your house and given them to me. And it happened at the time when the flocks conceived that I lifted my eyes and I saw in dreams, and behold, the rams which leaped between the flocks were streaked, speckled, and gray spotted. Then the Malak power spoke to me in a dream, saying, Yaakov, and I said, Here I am. And he said, Lift your eyes down and see, all the rams which leap upon the flocks are streaked, speckled, and gray spotted. For I have seen all that Laban is doing to you. I am the power of Wayetzei-And, where you anointed the pillar and where you made a vow to me. Now arise, get out of this land, and return to the land of your Mishpachah. And Rachel and Leah answered and said to him, Is there still any portion of our inheritance for us in our father's bed? Nay, are we not considered strangers by him? For he has sold us and also completely consumed our money. For all these riches which Yahuwah has taken from our father are really ours and our children's. Now then, whatever power has said to you, do it. Then Yaakov rose and set his sons and his issues on camels, and he carried away all his livestock and his possessions which he had gained, his acquired livestock which he had gained in Padan Aram, to go to his Abba Yasak in the land of Canaan. Now Laban had gone to shear his sheep, and Rachel had stolen the household idols that were her idols, and it is so.
And it is so. Now, it says one of these was likely to be the image of the false deity known as gold, which was used as a name for the son of Yaakov. We're going to look at verse 15, also 19. We'll look at that as well, again, from another perspective. Now, it says, does not he regard us as foreigners? Now, this is what they're saying to their ish, because they've been there. They see what's been going on. They see what was being taken from them. Now, you have to understand, when Laban took from Yaakov, he also took from Rachel, Leah, and their children. So he basically kept them crippled and kept them in a place where they couldn't move. And when Yahuwah says move, you got to move.
Right.
When he says get up and leave, that means you have to leave. And so he was telling them, because they could not be Baruch there because of the treacherous ways of Laban. Now, the bride price, paid by the groom was often transferred to the bride as an indirect dowry. As such, it became part of the financial service for her that served as an insurance policy of sort. This claim of Leah and Rachel suggests that they have neither direct nor indirect dowry, their share of the inheritance, and therefore no financial security would be provided by staying in the region of their Abba, or in their Mishpachah. So they had nothing. And this is why the question was asked, because they did have knowledge of what they were supposed to have. The value of Yaakov's 14 years of labor have apparently never been assigned to their present or future holdings. He was just greedy, and he was taking everything up. He one of them people that every time he got something, he probably one that was flashy, flaunty, and just did everything. It says, according to Westbrook, if Leah and Raquel remained in their Abba's household, they would not receive this inheritance share until his death. But at the same time, their despair of receiving it even then, if their Abba, as his conduct hitherto has indicated, has no intention of making a formal assignment. So they even themselves see. Now you have to understand that's probably why one of the reasons why he's married off his older daughter the way he did. Because remember, he was living under the reputation of his Abba, not his own. And so you can even look at the character and how his son how they carry themselves. Basically, he's taking what is our father's. You're thinking, you don't hear nothing about them being out there doing anything that Yaakov. Are you following me? It said that basically he took the job that Raquel had. And so, but here it is, they basically made that statement, and now they feel like what he has belongs to their Abba, which is not so. Yahuwah is the one who ruled them with that. The song said, what is yours. And what he has for you is for you, and can't nobody take that away from you. Without such an assignment, Laban alone has profited from Yaakov's labor, meaning that he has, in effect, simply sold his daughters. He literally sold them. So there was nothing to get. When they took that, when he get 7 years and the next 7 years, he actually sold them. And once again, this is why when people get to talk about, well, polygamy is right. No, it's not. This man literally sold his 2 daughters because he was greedy. And later on, we're going to see when it came down to the structure and infrastructure of Yasharal, that's one of the things that Abba Yahuwah forbade for them to sell their what? Daughters. And even their sons. Van Setter suggests that the absence of resources available to the daughters may simply be the result of Yaakov's continued success. But this does not explain their declaration that their Abba has sold them. Once again, they realized and they knew that he had sold them. They weren't getting anything, and they probably had not even talked to their Abba in months, years probably. We look at verse 19, household powers. The household cherubim were images that represented deceased ancestors in order to venerate them. Now, the Tephirim and family gods or powers. Now, the one thing that's important with this is because, once again, if you read in the scroll of Yasher, you find out that many believe that the reason why she took it is because this is what he would use. These were his talismans to use for divination. And when he dealt with Yaakov, and he asked him, said that he saw it through what? Divination, that his way as he prospered, excuse me, and he wanted to be sure of how he was prospering. And so it says that Raquel basically took it because she wanted to make sure that he could not find them and run them down. Okay? But let's look at real quickly, verse 15 again, where it just says, or let's just look at what was stated in that first verse. We'll have to read it out. And verse 15, are we not considered strangers by him? For he has sold us and also completely consumed our money. Now you have to understand, when you read into this and you look at the type of person Raquel is, you have to understand, it wasn't that she took this because she was afraid that he was going to find them. She took this as a means to show him, no, I will have an inheritance and I will have something that belongs to my people. Are you following me?
Yes.
Because once again, if that's the case, then he would have been doing those things beforehand. Now, I'm not second guessing him in any form or fashion, but what I am saying is when you look at verse 15, and basically she is basically saying, now are we looked at as foreigners? He's basically sold us. So really, we have nothing here. Nothing is invested from here in us. And so when you have a person of that nature or that caliber, you can kind of look and say, okay, no, she took this thing. I truly believe because her mentality is, I'm gonna leave with something that is mine and that belongs from my, or that's a part of my hometown. So we can really look at that and see that this is why she took that. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
And so, to basically show, no, I'm gonna have something. I'm not walking away from here without anything that's mine. And so, as we continue to read on in verse, now she says it to him in verse 16. She says, "For all these riches which Yahuwah has taken from our Abba are really ours and our children's. Now then, whatever power has said to you, do it." Basically saying that this is ours, and we should not feel guilty, and neither are we gonna feel guilty. Whatever he has said to you, let's go. Let's get on down the road and let's move. Then Yaakov rose, and I'll show you how wealthy he is, and his sons and his wives on camels. And he carried away all his livestock and all his possessions, which he had gained, his acquired livestock, which he had gained in Padan Aram, to go to his Abba Isaac in the land of Canaan. So he didn't want to go back empty handed. And so he was able to do these things. Now you have to understand, camels once again are were a symbol of wealth. So he was wealthy. He had not only camels, but he had plenty of servants, and so he was able to do what he did. Now remember, when he got there, he was what? Poor. He was broke. But you see how Yahuwah took him from being broke and poor and looked upon as being a dead man to really bringing him up to the forefront to where people acknowledge that he is very wealthy. And this has to be the power of Baba Yahuwah upon his life.
That's right.
And it is so.
Mhm.
All right. Let's finish reading. Yeah, we're at verse 21.
8 verses.
Mhm.
Verse 21, it reads, "And he fled with all that he had, and he rose up and passed over the river and headed towards the mountains of Gilead. And on the third day Laban was told that Yaakov had fled. Then he took his brothers with him and pursued him for 7 days' journey, and he overtook him in the mountains of Gilead. But in a dream by night, Yahuwah came to Laban the Aramean and said to him, Guard yourself that you do not speak to Yaakov either good or evil. Then Laban overtook Yaakov. Now Yaakov had pitched his tent in the mountains, and Laban with his brothers pitched in the mountains of Gilead. Laban said to Yaakov, What have you done, that you have deceived me and driven my daughters off like captives taken with a sword? Why did you flee secretly and deceive me, and not inform me, and I would have sent you away with joy and songs, with lyrics and with tambourine and lyre. Excuse me. And you did not allow me to kiss my sons and my daughters. Now you have been foolish to do this. It is in the power of my hand to do evil to you. But Yahuwah of your father, of your Abba, spoke to me last night, saying, Guard yourself that you do not speak to Yaakov either great or evil. And it is so.
And it is so. And he said, shut your mouth. Shut your mouth. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
And so it's important we understand these are certain things that would not. Okay, now let's look at verse 23. Verse 23, I'm sorry, yeah, 23. Let's look at 23. Then he took his brethren with him and pursued him for 7 yamim journey, and he overtook him in the mountains of Gilead. Yeah. Now, his kinsmen pursued after him 7 yamim journey. A 3 days distance separated them in the first place, and another 3 days were required for a messenger to go and inform Laban. At the time of the messenger's arrival, Yaakov was 6 yamim journey distance. Since Laban caught up with him on the next yamim, he covered in one day what it took Yaakov 7 yamim. This points out this was natural since Yaakov would be traveling slowly on account of the flocks. So that lets you know he had quite an amount of stuff. But that also lets you know this man was greedy and trying to catch up. When people are determined to get to you, they will get to you. Now here's another rendering from the Zondervan, from Zondervan commentary. And it says, the site of Mitzpah, where Laban catches up to Yaakov, is not known, but from Haran to the northern end of the hill country of Gilead is approximately 350 miles. To reach there in 10 days, Yaakov 3-day head start plus 7 yamim for Laban's travel. Chapter 31, verse 22 and 23. Yaakov must travel 35 miles a day, an incredible weight. Caravans usually managed 23 at most. Sheep and goats could neither achieve nor maintain that pace, and women and children would likewise slow down the speed of travel. Given the circumstances, Yaakov could not expect to cover more than 10 miles per yom. This has led even conservatives, commentators to suspect that he was reading or that we are reading something wrong. Whenever the biblical text refers to a journey, and this is derek, which is Hebrew, of a particular number of yamim, the number is 1, 3, or 7. This suggests the possibility that the expression is idiomatic rather than precise. Yet that does not solve all the problems, because if Yaakov travels at a rate of only 10 miles per yom, one would expect Laban to catch him long before he arrives at the hill country of Gilead. Laban can perhaps travel 20 miles per yamim, in which case he could have caught Yaakov after only 3 yamim, about 65 miles from Haran, soon after he crossed the Euphrates at Tilbarsib. Certainly the results will be different if one assumes that Yaakov is traveling faster or Laban is slower, but the number we have used, 10 and 20 miles per day respectfully, are the most defensible. If Yaakov is traveling 12 or 13 miles per yom, and Laban is traveling 17, Laban would catch Yaakov after about 7 yamim, and as the text seems to suggest, but they would only be about 110 miles from Haran. That would put them somewhere near Ebal, which would still only 1/3 of the way to the hill country of Gilead. The only considerable solution at the moment that explains Laban's not catching up to Yaakov before the hill country of Gilead is to assume that it takes Laban a week or 10 days or 10 yamim to prepare for the trip before he can set out, and that he cannot travel very fast. After all, he is over 150 years old at this point. So he, once again, he started out, and so they're showing you realistically, are you following me? The reason why it was probable for him to catch up with him. One, we know that when you have that many people, a caravan, it's going to be difficult, and not in the sense because people are not doing, but you got sheep, you got to stop, you got to water them, you got people that have to eat, drink water, and so when you have a large caravan as he has, it's going to take a minute. Are you following me?
Yes.
For them to catch. What may seem long to others is realistic when we begin to take it apart and really dive into it. Now, once again, it's important for us to understand everything that is taking place here. Now, when we look at in verse 24, he says, but power had come to Laban, the Aramite, in a dream by night, and said to him, be careful that you speak to Yaakov, neither great nor bad. In other words, let it be general. So Laban overtook Yaakov. Now Yaakov had pitched his tent in the mountain, and Laban with his brother pitched in the mountains of Gilead. So once again, we kind of see how this thing is playing out for us. And Laban said to Yaakov, what have you done that you have stolen away unknown to me and carried away my daughters like captives taken with the sword? Now you have to understand something. We could ask the question, if he would have told him, I'm getting ready to leave, what do you think he would have done? He would not have let him leave. He would not have let him go. And if he did, he would have basically tried to strip him of everything he worked for, took his daughters captive and said, if you're going to leave, you're going to have to work for me another 7 years. Now you have to understand that's greedy, and a long stretch of greedy. 150 years, that's a long stretch of greedy. Because for 14 years he worked for him. Then he continued to work for him even after that. And then those last few years, he just really started accumulating his own wealth. So you have to understand, Laban really had some stuff, but he was greedy.
Yes.
And so when you see this, we can understand why he needed to leave. But once again, he told him, he said, speak to him basically in general. Don't speak to him any other way. And so in his mind, you're taking them away with the sword. And you have to remember, he didn't leave them even an inheritance. He sold them. He sold them. So that had to be his general conversation and basically his excuse for saying what he said. You start thinking, ask the question, well, when they was there, how many times did you come out and kiss them on the forehead and hug them? How many times did you go and embrace your sons and your daughters? How many times did you go out there and embrace them? Now you want to see that your cash cow is gone, and now you ready to come in and complain. Now we look at verse 27. Why did you flee away secretly and steal away from me and not tell me? For I might have sent you away with joy and songs, with timbrel and harp. You start thinking, no, 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 no. Might, and you have to understand, might is conditional. He didn't say respectively do this. He said, I might have done it, which says he wasn't going to do it. Are you following me?
Yes.
Then he goes into the song and dance, and you did not allow me to kiss my sons and my daughters. Now you have done foolishly in doing so. That's almost like to a threat, because like now you're being foolish. When you look at how he used him all those years, how he basically took from him all those years. And finally, when it is time for him to accumulate wealth, now all these things come about. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
All right. Now, when we look at verse, all right, he says that he was afraid. We know that he said to Laban, because I was afraid, for I said perhaps you would take your daughters from me by force. And he probably would have. He was right in his decision making. And then you remember Yahuwah told him to leave. So he understood that Yahuwah doesn't lie, and so he knew he had to get away from that. Now look at verse 32. With whomever you find, he says, then Yaakov answered and said, Laban, because I was afraid. Now, when he said he stole some things from him, verse 32 says, with whomever you find your power, do not let him live. In the presence of our brethren, identify what I have of yours and take it with you. For Yaakov did not know that Raquel had stolen them. Now, there are different things, and I'm going to read to you a little bit about why she took these teraphim, the family deities. Now, it says first, she took them for good luck charms, as many people today carry pendants, crosses, and other Babylonian objects for similar reasons. So it was a charm. But let's look at what these things were. What they were. There are a variety of opinions about the teraphim, and there probably were various practices with regard to whether these ancestors were worshipped or considered to have, even quasi-divine status. Minimally, ancestor images provided a focus for rites related to the care of the dead, and also were at times used in divination. And when you hear people, especially when you look at our people, when you hear our people say, well, it's nothing wrong with your ancestors watching over you. Our ancestors can't watch over us because they are not alive. Right. Are you following me?
Yes.
And so it's important we understand that. But these are some of the things that they use. Now, this is what it says also. In some of the archives from the mid-second millennium BC, legal documents allow us to see how the family powers figured in the inheritance. At Nuzi, several texts indicate that the principal heir received the family powers. Text from Imar, one document suggests that the household powers were not to be given to a man outside the family. Raquel would have no right to this portion of the inheritance, nor would Yaakov. Laban is logically distressed over this breach of inheritance practices, as well as concerned that the care of the ancestors will be jeopardized by the loss of the images. The family powers were not only the tie between the family unit and its property, but also the very family. So once again, this is what they were brought up on, and because she heard, well, I have nothing. I have no inheritance. Oh, I'm not leaving empty handed. I'm taking something with me. And she did. Are you following me?
Yes.
Because she already acknowledged that what she had through Yaakov was hers. But she wanted something from her native home. She wants something from her home where she grew up. Now, since we can therefore conclude that Rachel's interest in the teraphim has more to do with family and inheritance than with the issue of worshiping other powers. The spirits of the ancestors were not substitute deities, though some uses of them were certainly prescribed in ideal worship, even as it took shape. When women married, it was customary for them to transfer their loyalty to the power of their ish. So this is why, too, we see that she says to him, whatever your power says do, that's what you do. In other words, whatever he says, we're going to follow you. But at the same time, she still had that little way of trickery about her because she stole it. Because she wanted to have something that was from her hometown and from her home. Now, it says women were not free to choose the power they would worship, were automatically by marriage bound to the power of the ish. In most cases, because of uh, endogamy, endogamy, endogamy. The power of her Abba would be the same as the power of her husband, because people in the same geographical location, and especially people in the same clan, tended to worship the same deities. So this was something she would have, but who else was going to worship with her? Nobody but Leah, but Belial, and the other handmaiden, because nobody else was going to follow that. But once again, when you look at her heart and look, the reason she took it is because one, it had ancestral connection, but then also this was their power. And she had to have something because you're thinking, why didn't you take a bowl? Why didn't you take a blanket? Why did you take this? Are you following me? Just like our ancestors went into Mitzrayim and, and they thought that Yahuwah was, simple and didn't know that the reason they were going in there is because their whole purpose was to do what? Worship the sun power. That's the only reason why they wanted to go back into Mitzrayim. And so when you see this, you start thinking, oh, here it is, a trickery at its finest, or deception at its finest. So you start thinking you're not fooling anybody but yourself. So we have to really be careful of those things. Are you following me? All right. And so we see this, and so it is important that we see that she has stolen. Now, verse 33 says, and Laban went into Yaakov's tent, into Leah's tent, and into the two maids' tents, but he did not find them. Then he went out Leah's tent and entered Rachel's tent. Now Rachel had taken, the household idols, put them in the camel's saddle and sat on them, and Laban searched all about the tent but did not find them. Now that lets you know their tents and everything was set up, but she was smart too. She kind of had that little trickery or that way about her too, because she puts it on there and then she gets up there and she basically says that this is her time of monthly flow, or having her period. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Verse 35, it says, and she said to her father, let it not displease my father that I cannot rise before you, for the matter of women is with me, and searched but did not find the household idols. She lied right then and there. Are you following me?
Yes.
Now, let's look at this. Let's kind of look at this right here, having my period or the woman's time. In the ancient world, menstruation was a mysterious thing. Blood was often connected to impurity, and since impurity was contagious, menstruating women were typically isolated, and there were some reluctant to touch them or even be near them. Some cultures, the monthly bleeding made a woman vulnerable to demonic attack. She was considered a woman under taboo. Any of these aspects of belief would have made Laban careful to search Rachel's tent, or not to search her tent too carefully, because he didn't want to be basically found in that. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Now let's look at this real quick. The taboo aspect. The reason why I want to do this, because you have people today that believe that when which nobody should ever know when it's your time, when it's that woman's time, except for your ish. Are you following me? Nobody else is supposed to know. Nobody is supposed to be in your life to where they know those times. Are you following me? Now, I'm not talking about like your Ema or somebody like that. And I will even go to say this, even your papa, especially if he has to, if his services are needed or something because you can't go and do it. Are you following me? It's important because you have a lot of papas um, that have to do these things. Are you following me?
Yes.
They have to provide for their daughters because there is no Ema around to do so. And so just kind of bringing this out with this, I'm not boring y'all, am I? All right, now let's look what is being spoken of when it comes down to the ministration. Ministration rendering a woman unclean in the ancient world and would have prohibited her from social contact and from food preparation and serving. The text specifically indicates that she has already gone through menopause. But if she is to bear a child, her period would need to restart. The timing would have to be precise here. In verse 6, Abraham asked Sarah to bake some bread, an activity often forbidden to ministrating women in Abraham's time. In other words, he would have not really known. And so for him to ask her means that he had a knowledge of her what? Her body, which is something important for us. And I want to take a break right here just to, or take a sidebar. In relationships, you are going to get to know your spouse's body and not just in intimacy. You have to know your spouse's body because if ever an ailment or a disease ever comes upon them, you need to know what you need to do to bring about resolution. And so you don't walk around and say, well, that's them. I don't deal with that. This is the person you're going to be intimate with. This is the person you're going to spend the rest of your life with. Right. So it is important that you know one another's what? Body. And I'm not just talking about parts. Right. Are y'all following me? You need to know the makeup and the mechanism and the things that make that body well, whole, happy. And even things that can make it sick.
That's right.
Are you following me?
Yes.
And this is important, back in the day when I was growing up, you still had people that were old fashioned, especially brothers would not go to the store and buy sanitary napkins or buy pads. And I know many people would think, oh, is she talking about that? Yes, I absolutely am. Because when it's all said and done, if there is nobody in your home but you and your issue, what you going to do? You're going to sit there and not help her? You're not going to sit and go to the store and provide for her what she needs? That's silly, foolish you if you sit up there and say, well, I'm not going to do that. So you have to know, once again, what you have to do. Now, we know there are things you're not supposed to do. You're not supposed to be intimate. You're not supposed to touch. But if she is in need of your help, it is your responsibility to help her. And it is your responsibility to know when that time is coming too. And it can be done. Are you following me? Yes. And so we've got to put away a lot of these traditional customs, and understand what I'm saying. I said tradition, where it teaches that or says that women are basically at this time is taboo, and you are what is it? You are contagious. That's nuts. You can't catch that. Are you hearing me? Yes. We understand the laws, and we understand that we are supposed to carry ourselves in a certain way. We know you're not supposed to sleep with your Isha when it is her time, when it is her womanly time. That is understood, and nobody should ever do that, and nobody should ever pressure anybody for doing that. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
But you are never to treat her like she is a disease, like she is a parasite, like she is a disgrace. You are never to do that, because let me tell you something. During that time, women can become very emotional. Your body is going through a whole lot of changes, and you need somebody that's going to be able to be there to support you. Are you following me? You may need some tea. You may need some cocoa. You may need a chocolate bar, and you don't need nobody sitting up there walking around acting like a nut. Taking what is them things, tongues or something, or a shovel, and putting it on there and sticking it through the door. Nobody wants to be treated like that. You can't catch anything by touching them. You'll get in trouble by trying to be intimate. Are you following me?
Yes.
And so it's important we understand. And so he knew her body, and so he asked her because he knew that her time had come and passed. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
And he asked her to bake the bread. Are you following me?
Yes.
No. Let's look at this again. Yet she would not be confined to her tent unless she actually had her woman's her time or her period. If this was the issue, she experienced the onset of her period as dinner was being served. We know even from the biblical narratives that women in menstruation were at times confined to their tents. And the reason why, once again, you have to understand at that time, once again, and I want to bring this out, and it's not just for women. Men need to know this as well.
Right.
Why do men need to know this? Because you need to know that that time comes upon your Isha and she needs your help. You need to be able to know what to go and buy for her, what to provide for her. Back in that time, they had to make the pads. I remember hearing my great great grandmother say they used to have to take cloths, like how you had cloth diapers for babies before they got all modernized and made the diapers with the gels in it, the ones you can throw away. They didn't have those at those times. They had the ones that you had to use and you had to wash them out. And so in that time, it was more, you were more susceptible and it was more easier for a person to make a mess with their clothes or on their clothes. Why? Because once again, you have to understand when you had to make your own sanitary pad, there were things that material could leak, it could seep through. And so it was more sanitary, and it was just right for them to stay in their tent because that was the only safe way and the only protection. And then it also helped to keep from messing somebody else's stuff up. So they would maintain in their own tent. But in the day and time we live in, we don't use those. Are you following me? There are different kinds. Now you do have those that make their own and that basically still use those. Like you still have people that use cloth diapers, which to me is truly the more economical way. But you've got to be willing to do everything that is needed so that you can ensure. Because see, when you get to dealing with the cloth diapers, you don't let that sit on the baby. You change that immediately, and you have to immediately wash those things out. Same thing with the cloth sanitary pad. You had to do the same thing, and they had different ones, and so they would ball them up and they would use them in that manner. Are you following me?
Yes.
And so it is important that we understand the method they had then and also the method they use now. Everything, when you go and look at them, you see they got that design from somewhere. That design didn't just come out of the air. It was not an osmosis design. This is a design that was already made, but they just what improved it. Now, there's some things that I would suggest not to use, but that would be for a whole nother time. But the bottom line is, once again, this is your Isha. You need to know her body, and you need to know her body, her ins and outs, and you need to know her mood swings. Are you following me?
Yes.
Because a house that is a happy home is one where not only is communication key, but also knowing one another is key, and especially knowing your Isha's body. And it is so.
Yes.
All right, now, so those were times. Now, now this is a view that is also attested in the ancient Near East. Now, this is a view from the ancient Near East. On an imagery scale of pollution, female indisposition ranked highly. This meant that a woman radiated danger during her period. A person could contact pollution merely by coming close to her or by looking at her. Now, come on, really. Hence, an Assyrian harem edict from the 13th century BC stated that an indisposed woman was not allowed to appear before the king at the time of the sacrifices. Even visual contact could harm the purity of the coat. You see how foolish people in that time, some of them really were?
Yes.
You're going to look at a person, and the only reason why they would know this is that either one or two things, they mess up their clothes. But if you notice, the only one that has to run around and say they're unclean are the ones who are what? Lepers. Nobody else. He never said when it is a woman's time or monthly time that she had to be running around saying unclean, unclean. Are you following me? It is a process. It is a natural process of life, but it is how we handle it that determines whether or not we are clean or unclean. Now, if you walking around and, and leaving a trail or messing up stuff, yes, you're unclean. Are you following me?
Yes.
It's a little graphic, but it's the truth. Why? Because we need to understand how to deal with one another. A happy home is a safe and secure home. A home that is knowledgeable of these things is a home that Abba Yahuwah really can reside in. but he can't reside in a home where you got people all over the place. Are you following me?
Yes.
And so it's important that we understand these things, especially when you have newly couples and there's nobody there and she can't go out. Who's gonna go out? You have to understand. Back in the day, when babies were born, the hospital gave you everything you need. Now the hospital don't give you nothing. So you have to go and they tell you up for 6 weeks. You can't drive. You have to stay inside for 6 weeks. And your body has to heal. So what are you going to do? And if you're not close to your ema or close to somebody like that, the person you have to go to is your ish.
Right.
So once again, we need to look at things in their proper perspective. And these were what? These things came from what? Were attached in ancient Near East. And so because this was attached to these things, this is the way they treated their issues. That is not how you're supposed to treat your issue. Are you following?
Yes.
With the hub and respect, you are supposed to treat them. Now, so once again, this is it. Now, I want to read this. Though somewhat speculative, this link of thinking would explain why the announcement that Sarah would bear a child is introduced by a question concerning Sarah's whereabouts, leading the somewhat embarrassed Abraham to offer the euphemistic explanation that she is in the tent as a way of explaining that she is indisposed. Note our modern euphemism is that time of the month. One could also imagine a transitionary, indeed, and that is just the beginning. It would have constituted a remarkable sign of the resumption of her fertility. So what they're saying is the reason why she was, and he did not offer ask her to do this, is because almost at that time when it was spoken, boom, bada bing, here we come. You know what I'm saying? Because now soon, because remember he told around this time next year, you're gonna have a child. And so it is assuming this, once again, they're assuming this. This is why they said that she was not in their presence because she was, it was that time of month. And so if it being that time of month, and once again, with the stuff they had, she would not have been in the presence of them. And this is very well why this could have been. And not that I don't believe he was embarrassed, because especially if after Abba Yahuwah had said he was going to give him a child, you have to have that in order to have a child. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
It's just a symbol of the life that is still in the womb. And so that is important for us to understand. And so I wanted to bring that out when it came because she was lying. You hear me? She was basically just lying because she didn't want that he was gonna go in there and come right on out. Oh, okay. Pump the brakes, don't touch nothing else, and hurry up and come on up out of there. Are you following me?
Yes.
And so this is why she used that lie. And so she said, as she said that. Now it says, and she said to her, I will let it not displease my master that I cannot rise before you for the matter of customs or women is with me. And he searched, but did not find the household item. In other words, his search was limited because that right there was an indication. Don't go any further. You are forbidden to go any further into looking. She lied to her Abba that she was ministrating so the idols would not be taken away. And she thought they were going to be used, once again, this is her one theory, to track them down through divination by her dad. But I also would like to interject that I believe she took it because she realized that she had no inheritance. And so because he had basically taken everything in her heart of hearts and in her mind, I'm going to take this because I deserve this. This is mine. This is what I was supposed to get. So I'm going to go ahead and take it. Are you following me?
Yes.
Look at her character. When she's fighting with, well, not so much fighting, but arguing with Yaakov. Why haven't you given me children? He said, I'm not Abba Yahuwah. So you have to kind of see there when she's talking to her sister, I'll sell him to you, or let him come into your tent for these mandrakes. So you kind of see her character. Are you following me?
Yes.
And her character is showing. And so we can be inclined to see that I believe it could have been both. That this was her way of wanting it because it was part of her inheritance that she was denied, and also because it did have the ability for her to use it in divination. Are you following?
Yes.
All right, let's finish reading. We are in chapter 31, verse 36.
Verses.
8.
Yaakov was angry and took Laban to task. What is my crime? He asked. Laban, what sin have I committed that you hunt me down? Now that you have searched through all my goods, what have you found that belongs to your household? Put it here in front of your relatives and mine, and let them judge between the two of us. I have been with you for 20 years now. Your sheep and your goats have not miscarried, nor have I eaten rams from your flocks. I did not bring you animals torn by wild beasts. I bore the loss myself, and you demanded payment from me for whatever was stolen by day or night. This is what my situation this was my situation, The heat consumed me in the daytime, and the cold at night, and sleep fled from my eyes. It was like this for 20 years. I was in your household. I worked for you 14 years for your daughters, and 6 years for your flocks, and you changed my wages 10 times. If Yahuwah of my Abba and Yahuwah of Abraham and the fear of Isaac had not been with me, you would surely have sent me away empty-handed. But Yahuwah has seen my hardship and the toil of my hands, and last night he rebuked you. Laban answered Yaakov, the women are my daughters, the children are my children, and the flocks are my flocks. All you see is mine. Yet what can I do today about these daughters of mine, or about the children they have borne? Come now, let's make a covenant, you and I, and let it serve as a witness between us. So Yaakov took a stone and set it as a pillar. And then so.
So that's fine. You read the 45. Okay, that's fine. Now we're back looking at 38. That's a long time. You know that's really. He said, y'all know when you hear stuff like this, that touches my heart because it makes you almost want to cry. You start thinking really, for 20 years, this man, he said he didn't sleep. He did none of his stuff miscarried. That man, he was 24/7 working to maintain everything. He said uh, um, he got mad at me. He said, "Look, you didn't stop me because you know he probably wasn't there. He probably wasn't going in there doing like this. That man probably was in there throwing stuff, throwing things all over the place. Where is it? And looking up stuff and just really being outright with him and going through. And he gets angry and he rebukes him. It's like, hold up. Now, mind you, Yahuwah has already spoken to Yaakov about what is taking place. Right. He said, you didn't search all my things. What part of your household? Little you know, his issue was sitting on it. Things have you found? Set it here before my brethren and your brethren, that they may judge between us both. These 20 years I have been with you. Once again, 20 years is a long time. And the whole 20 years that he was there, he worked hard. He never missed a beat. He worked hard. He said, 20 years I have been with you. You and your female goats have not miscarried their young, and I have not eaten the rams of your flock. In other words, he said, look, I didn't go take the choicest ones out. I didn't sneak and eat anything that was yours. I made sure that whatever was yours remained yours. That which was torn by beasts, I did not bring to you. I bore the loss of it. In other words, he took it as his own. You required it from my hand, whether stolen by day or stolen by night, by Yamim or Layla. There I was in the Yamim. The drought consumed me, the frost by night, and my sleep departed from me. And mind you now, he still got to go home to women that are using him like a piece of meat. He's in between all this. That's enough. You have to know that Yahuwah was with him. He was with him because that's enough to make a person lose their mind. Yes. You out there doing all this. Now it comes to this point, and the reason he really knows he has to leave is because he's ready to take everything he has. Right. He's greedy, a greedy old man, and was greedy from the beginning. Even when he was a little boy, he was greedy, or a young man. He was just greedy. He was greedy. Now he says, your sheep and goats. The claims of Yaakov match up well with the normal sorts of arrangements that were made between shepherds and sheep owners. The terms of the contract reflect the inescapable fact that the shepherd is beyond the control of the owner. The accounts were drawn up at the spring shearing when the wool was weighed and the main lambing season was over. And new agreement was made for the coming year. This used the annual productivity ratio in respect of birth of new animals, set against expected deaths. The shepherd normally kept all the milk products and fixed amounts of wool per adult animal, plus any animals in excess of the agreed ratio, while tradition also allowed him a food ratio and a clothing allowance, as well as the pay of a subordinate. Now, once again, typical agreements assume there will be a 15% natural loss and an 80% birth rate. So he's basically telling him, look, you know the ratio, you know all this, but none of your stuff can you ever go back and say that you suffered loss. I suffered loss for everything because I made sure you didn't have to. Again, that's respect. And also he understood his position when he got there. Now, once again, like I said, that's horrible. Verse 41 tells us, thus I have been in your house 20 years. I served you 14 years for your 2 daughters and 6 years for your flock, and you have changed my wages 10 times. Once again, that you got a lot of people that would have been like, oh no, brother, they're gonna find you somewhere sleep permanently. Because I'm not doing this, but you have to understand integrity is key. And just because another person doesn't have integrity and lacks that ability doesn't mean that now we fight them or go in the ring with them doing the same thing they've done to us. We don't repay evil with evil. Right. That's not how we do things. Now, once again, he tells him, he says, working with idolaters is not easy as they are not righteous and may keep changing as they live by the standard of this world. Like you said, he said, you changed my wages every time. It was always a change because he wanted to keep him there. He did not want him to leave, and he definitely didn't want him to succeed. Verse 42, unless the power of my Abba, the power of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had been with me. Now, look at what he says. And the fear of his Abba had been on him. He says, surely now you would have sent me away empty-handed. Power has seen my affliction and the labor of my hands and rebuked you last Layla. He told me, he said, look, I know you got rebuked. So you ain't going to come here like ain't nothing been said to you. You ain't going to dance around this. No. He said, but if you didn't fear them, you would have taken everything away from me. He would have basically sent him right back out the way he came. And Laban answered and said to Yaakov, these daughters are my daughters. You have to understand, there's some people you can tell all day long, and no matter what you say to them, they hit as hard as a brick. Because he's still trying to say, they are my daughters, and these children are my children, and this flock is my flock. All that you see is mine. But what can I do, this yom, to these, my daughters, or their children whom they have given birth? Laban speaks half truth. The daughters were no longer his after he married them off. The only thing that was his in relation to them, the flocks belonged to Yaakov and not to Laban. So really, he wasn't really telling the truth because it wasn't his. Everything that he had is already back in his home. Right. That was his. And so when you're dealing with people that are, once again, thieves, and you're dealing with people that are deceptive, right, and deceivers, there's no way of winning with them. They're not going to, they won't relent, and they'll constantly believe they're right in their methods of doing things and so forth. And these are people you really don't want to deal with because one or two things, either they will make you hurt them or they will hurt you behind their business practices. And he just was not one that had any kind of ethics when it came to business practices. And we can learn from this. I think sometimes when we are looking at the writings, we really overlook a lot of things because we only focus on one or two things, polygamy, and then we focus on the second thing, polygamy, and then we focus on that third major thing that's really, really important, and that's polygamy. Right. So by the time we walk away from that chapter, the only thing we've learned is polygamy. But we don't see everything that was in there. Do you know this man was mistreated? You know, he out there doing all this is cold and then you trying to get your house together and you trying to maintain, but not one time did he ever renege on what he told Abba Yahuwah. Not one time. And so it's important we understand that. And so he had to rebuke him, and that's right. You sometimes people won't learn until they are rebuked. Now, looking at verse 44. Now therefore come, let us make a covenant, you and I, and let it be a witness between you and me. Now you have to understand something. While he's bringing this forward, he's already then spoke against Yaakov to Esau. So while he's there, in other words, it's like if plan A don't work, plan B has to work. Because one way or the other, I got to get my stuff back. So while he's there making a covenant with him, this is a covenant, and I truly believe based upon false principles. Because it's only for that reason. But at the same time, he now goes and he consorts with Esau, and he basically had already sent word to Esau that your brother's heading back in. He's coming back in. So he was manipulative, he was deceptive, and he was just low down and dirty. And this was their uncle. This is their uncle. Are you following me?
Yes.
It was their uncle. So once again, we see these things. Verse 45, so Yaakov took a stone and set it up as a pillar. Let's begin to read verse 46, please.
He said to his relatives, gather some stones. So they took stones and piled them in a heap, and they ate there by the heap. Laban called it Yeger Sahadutha, and Yaakov called it Galid. Laban said, this heap is a witness between you and me today. That is why it was called Galid. It was also called Mizpah, because he said, may Yahuwah keep watch between you and me when we are away from each other. If you mistreat my daughters, or if you take any wives beside my daughters, even though no one is with us, remember that Yahuwah is a witness between you and me. Laban also said to Yaakov, here is this heap, and here is this pillar I have set up between you and me. This heap is a witness, and this pillar is a witness. That I will not go past this heap to your side to harm you, and that you will not go past this heap and pillar to my side to harm me. May Yahuwah of Abraham and Yahuwah of Nahor, power of their Abba, judge between us. So Yaakov took an oath in the name of the fear of his father Isaac. He said he offered a sacrifice there in the hill country and invited his relatives to a meal. After they had eaten, they spent the night there. Early next morning, Laban kissed his grandchildren and his daughters and wooed them. Then he left and returned home.
And it is so, you know, I'm thinking, oh, look at what he did. Ain't he just a upstanding, you know, respectable old man? No, that old man was a mess. He was a mess. Now, because this is a false oath. Now, the word witness this is the word witness in Aramaic, the first. Then the word Yaakov used is a witness in Hebrew. Now, Laban put Yaakov under a false oath, as he could have taken more wives. This is what he's saying if he wanted to. Now, I'm going to read this just to put this out here to show you how people do things. Now, listen to what it says. Because it said it was perfectly legal in the Torah to do that. The world will always impose its own standard upon you to bring you into bondage. Now, the same people that be talking all this don't have no 3 or 4 wives, don't even have one. And so, but nonetheless, he esteemed his word to his death. Now, you have to understand, he did not want but one. And I don't understand how when people read this, they don't see that. He went there and he had fallen head over heels for Raquel. He worked 7 years. That was the dowry. That was the pay for her. And he said, well, our custom is you are supposed to marry the oldest daughter, which we know they knew the custom. But this is why specifically he said your younger daughter and gave her name and not just made it general, your daughter. Because he had to be specific, because he did not want to happen to him what really happened to him anyway. Now you have to understand that was Laban using trickery. And so because he ahabed Raquel, he said, I'll work. He said, I will do it 7 more years. Now in that same week, he got her. Now let's look at this to show this in all fairness. Now, after he gets with Raquel, His time with Leah is very limited. Excuse me. She has to buy time with him. She has to basically coerce him to come and spend time with her. Because the whole time he's in the house of the one he wanted to be his principal wife, or Isha. And even though he marries Leah first, you have to understand Raquel still becomes a principal Isha. Right. She's first in all of this. Even after she passes, she still is a principal wife. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
So now we can't, you sit and they say, well, it is right. No, it is not right. And then for him to say, don't take another Isha, he really wasn't to take no other one. That's almost, to me, that's almost like an insult. Mm-hmm. Follow me when I say that. And don't take another wife. I almost want to tell him, I didn't ask you for your first daughter, but you gave her to me. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
You know, you don't take another one. I would have only had one, but you kind of slid one over on me.
Right.
So this is why it's important that we open our hearts, our eyes, and our minds to truth and not continue to follow in the fables and into the customs and the traditions that have constantly carved out, paved, and set a foundation for our belief. This was wrong, and she suffered in the end behind it because of her greedy old daddy. Make me mad when I read it. It really do. Makes me angry when I read it because we look at these things and we try to justify his actions. And then people say, well, you know, it wasn't right. Yes, his Ema sent him there to get an Isha. But his uncle, who was conniving and deceptive, put him in that trick bag. And not only him, but his daughter. His own daughter. Then he sold them. Now, y'all, to show y'all, if it was all that, why didn't he leave them an inheritance? Right. He didn't leave them anything because he wasn't planning to. That's why he did what he did. Any man that would do his daughter like that is not worth the soul in his body. Yeah. And that is the truth. You say, I'm getting emotional if you want to. And yes, that is. Because that's one of the things that irks me. Because we can't see the hurt that this caused these people. That caused hurt. You know, and you, who is not the author? Confusion. He's not the author of confusion. And so that was wrong. And no matter what people do to try to make it right, it's not right. All right, let's look at the heap is a witness. In verse 45, Yaakov responds to the suggestion of a covenant by setting up a pillar, after which a heap of stones is gathered. The agreement is then marked ceremonially by a communal meal and the formal proclamation of stipulations and an oath. The pillar has been discussed previously and serves two purposes here: the commemorate the covenant and to mark a territorial boundary. Yaakov's obligation concerns the treatment of his Ishas, Laban's daughter. He agrees not to take other wives, an act that will potentially lower the status of Leah and Raquel in Yaakov's mishpachah. This sort of clause also is found in marriage contracts from the town of Nuzai in the mid-second millennium. It appears that marriage contracts were typically drawn up only when there were unusual circumstances that called for a document to protect the rights of the groom, the legal status of the Isha, or the property rights of children. So that was the only time it was drawn up. Now you have to understand, he did this because he was greedy. He didn't care about their feelings. If he cared about their feelings, he would have allowed his first daughter to marry somebody that harmed her and that cherished her, like Yaakov did Raquel. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
That's you know, you don't want to just get with somebody because, well, you know, I'm getting old, or you know, ain't nothing right. I better go and grab somebody. All right, you grab something you can't get rid of, and you're gonna truly be miserable for the rest of your life. And this is why we do find people that are unhappy because they just grab folk. You know, well, I need to go ahead on and get with somebody, you know, because ain't no telling, I probably ain't gonna find nobody. Well, if you believe that, you won't find nobody. You won't. You will be lonely because you have settled. It's amazing. People won't settle for clothes. People won't settle for cars. They won't settle for homes, but they'll settle for relationships.
Right.
They'll settle for relationships. And you start thinking, no, I'm not doing that. Are you following me? No. because you have to live with that person for the rest of your life. Do y'all hear me?
Yes.
Capital L, lowercase I, L, F E, Life. Capital L, lowercase I, F E, life. And so you want to make sure you're with the right person. How are y'all feeling?
Yes.
All right. Very important. Laughing, but it's truly serious. Verse 53. The power of Abraham, the power of Nahor, and the power of the Abba judged between us, and Yaakov swore by the fear of his Abba, Isaac. Now they offered a sacrifice, and they ate like king, and stayed all night on the mountain. And early in the morning, he kissed his mishpachah, and he baruched them, and Laban departed to his own place. Now, once again, you have to understand, he didn't depart in his place in Shalom. He went and made sure that word got to Esau. This is how Esau knew he was coming, and this is how Esau came and was prepared to meet him on the road. How else would he know? You start thinking he didn't even know where he was, supposedly, because he didn't know that. But because Laban went and told it, and he wanted to make sure that one way or the other that he would suffer. So if you make an oath that you would not hurt him, then why would you open the door for somebody else to hurt him? Once again, this is very important to understand these things. Are you following me?
Yes.
Now, once again, in verse 53, the God of Nahor, the power of Nahor is the false term. The West has adopted for our Savior. The title God is abhorrent and should not be used. I'm going to read that again. The God of Nahor is the false term the Western has adopted for our Savior. The title God is abhorrent and should not be used. Never. This is not only a title, but a name that was used by Nahor and his Abba, Terah, to worship. This was also used by the descendants. This is why Laban calls upon this name. Now, mind you, he's a person of divination. And so we don't have any business talking about, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Yaakov. Excuse me? I don't know who you're talking about. Now, when you start dropping names and you start showing me that you know who he is, and I can respond to you. Until you do that, I can't respond to you. Are you hearing me? That's just like putting your bank card in a wrong bank. They're going to take that key card, and then they're going to call the police on your behind. Because you're trying to get access from an account that you don't even have, and then you're putting the wrong card in there. So it's important that we understand that. And we need to stop using the excuses, well, we're trying to teach. Well, teach people.
Right.
That's just a lie because people are comfortable. And let me show you something. People are scared. So this is why people will not. Are you hearing me? People will not stop using it because they are afraid if they don't use that and they use the name. What if I'm wrong? So they use the term or the title God thinking it generalizes. It does not. And anybody that gives you permission to do so is in error. They're in error. Because that's not a title we should be using, especially when everybody else is using it. Buddhists serve who? God. Are you following me?
Yes.
The Muslims serve who? God. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
The Christians serve God. So who do we serve? We serve Yahuwah. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Yeah, I know people don't like it, and it's fine. It's fine. But when it's all said and done, it's about relationship. It is about relationship, knowing him and him knowing you. Are you following me?
Yes.
Getting to know him, I should say. All right. Let's look at verse 32. 32 and 2. Let's read verse 1 and verse 2, chapter 22. And then we're going to go into our Torah portions.
Chapter 32.
Yeah, just verse 1 and 2.
Okay. And Yaakov went on his way, and the messengers of power met him. And when Yaakov saw them,
He said, "This is the camp of power." And he called the name of that place Mahanaim. It is so.
And it is so. It is so. And he went on his way, and the Malach met him. And so this is what takes place. Now let us go to our Haftorah portions. Hosea chapter 12. Excuse me. And we're going to start at verse 13. And we're going to read to chapter 14 all the way to verse 10. They're very short chapters. All right, when you have it said it is so. All right, let's read 8 verses, please. Verse 13.
So start at verse 13 instead of 8 verses.
We're starting at chapter 12, and we're at verse 13. Yes, and go all the way in chapter 13.
Hosea chapter 12, starting at verse 13. And by a prophet, Yahuwah brought Yasharal out of Mizraim, and by a prophet he was washed over. Ephraim has provoked most bitterly, so his master left his blood guilt on him and repaid him for his reproach. Chapter 13. When Ephraim spoke, there was trembling. He was lifted up in Yasharal. With the Baal he became guilty, and he died. And now they sin more and more, and make for themselves molded images from their silver, idols according to their skill, all of them the work of craftsmen. They say of them, let the men who slaughter kiss the cows. Therefore they shall be like a morning cloud, and like dew that goes away early, like chaff blown off from a threshing floor, and like smoke from a window. But I am Yahuwah your power, says the land of Mizraim, and a power beside me you shall not know, for there is no Savior besides me. I knew you in the wilderness, in the land of drought.
Excuse me, and it is so. Now, let's look at that verse where he said, and look what it says in verse 1 of chapter 13. When Ephraim spoke, there was trembling. He exalted himself in Yasharal, but when he became guilty through Baal, he died. He died. And now they sin more and more, and have made them molten images of their silver, according to their own understanding, even idols, all of them the work of the craftsmen. Of them they say, they that sacrifice men kiss cows. Therefore they shall be as the morning cloud, and as the dew that early passes away. This is in chapter 13. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Once again, when you start reading and looking at the prophetic words, they that sacrifice men kiss cows. And we started at verse 13, and we read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all the way to verse 6, right?
Yes.
Chapter 12, all the way to verse 6.
I didn't.
Oh, you read to verse 5? Okay, that's fine. Now, looking back at chapter 12, Ephraim hath provoked most bitterly. Therefore shall his blood be cast upon him, and his reproach shall his power return unto him. You have to understand some of the stuff that they were doing and continue to do provoke Abba Yahuwah. That's not what we want to do. We don't want to provoke him to anger.
Right.
And you have to understand, it takes a lot to provoke him. But the thing that provokes him is when we know to do better and we choose not to do better.
Right.
When we know that he is a jealous power and that he does not want us serving and esteeming other powers.
Right.
We're not even supposed to play with that. And yet our people still play with it. Now it says, when he spoke, he trembled, but he ended up, but when he became guilty through Baal, he died. And now they sin more and more and made them molten images of their silver, according to their own understanding, even idols. All of them the work of the craftsmen. Of them they say that sacrifice men kiss cows. Now, the heathen priests tell them that who sacrifices his child is worthy of being kissed by the calf idols. People mock them and say they kiss the images of cows but slay men, an allusion to the shedding of innocent blood. The heathen priests tell them the men who would sacrifice must kiss the cows, this being an element of the cult. Of the cult. Now you have to understand that's some crazy stuff. Sacrificing your children, but that's because they wanted to kiss a cow. You're still thinking, yo, what is wrong? Please tell me, what is wrong with this picture? What is wrong? There's something drastically wrong where our people, this is what our people kept falling into trouble because they kept falling into idolatry. They were so image conscious. They always wanted to worship an image. They always had to have something that had a form. Yahuwah has a form. Do you follow me?
Yes.
Just because he doesn't show it to us doesn't mean he doesn't have a form. This is where you know it's about relationship and not about, I have to see it in order to believe it. I have to, in order to be convinced. That's where we have to really grow up. Are you following me?
Yes.
Now, most bitterly, the sin into which Ephraim enticed Yashra, the worship of cows, has caused bitterness to Yahuwah. Leading one to sin is worse than slaying him. Thus, we find that the Ammonites and Moabites, for causing Yashra to sin, were punished more severely than the Mitzrayim who drowned them, and the Edomites who attacked them with the sword. Is important. Where the same Ibram word, and it's talking about waymarks, is used, and Ephraim has provoked Yahuwah with his altars set up like waymarkers, the innocent blood which he has shed. So the reason why Yahuwah was angry with them is because they caused them to go out and worship idols. Because that was worse than slaying them. Because you have to understand, if they were slayed, they were slayed in uprightness. But these people were going out and kissing calves and worshiping calves and so forth. And even with the calf worship, they did all sorts of things. And so this is why it was bitter unto Yahuwah, because this is what they caused the children of Yasharal to fall into. Are you following me?
Yes.
And so we don't want to do that. I've said it many times. Let us not find ourselves repeating the same things that our ancestors and forefathers did. And it is so. All right. Now, let's read verse 4 in chapter 13. Let's read 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, let's read to 9. And it is so.
Verse 4, I have been Yahuwah your Savior ever since the land of Mitzrayim. You know no power but me, and no Savior exists besides me. I knew you in the wilderness in the land of drought. When they had pasture, they became satisfied. They were satisfied and their hearts became proud. Therefore, we forgot them. So I will be like a lion to them. I will lurk like a leopard on the path. I will attack them like a bear robbed of her cubs and tear open the rib cage over their hearts. I will devour them there like a lioness, like a wild beast that will rip them open. I will destroy you, Yasharal. You will have no help but me. And it is so.
And it is so. Now you have to understand, when he goes into telling them and saying that Yahuwah is saying he shall have no other power, he is referring to the worship of the cows, not Yahush. We have to maintain the consistency of the language and of the conversation. He is dealing with them because they are kissing cows. Images of calves.
Right.
They are basic. This is what they're doing, and they're sacrificing their children to these things. And Yahuwah is saying this: no, enough is enough. Are you following me? You shall have no other power besides me. He is rebuking them on this. not because of Yahush. Are you following me? And
Yes.
people take the writings and misconstrue them and try to apply it in a place it does not belong. He is talking to them about the kissing and sacrificing to calves and worshiping of them. And so it's important that we understand that. Are you following me?
Yes.
The question is, how then could you forsake me for the calves? Once again, sometimes when I read this, it's hard for me to fathom why would our people, why would you leave power to go and serve a calf? You turn around, you can eat this calf, you can wear its hair on your body as clothing, you can use its skin. You can take this thing and primarily use it for whatever you want, and you're going to tell me you're going to worship this? You know, Yahuwah is like, really, you gonna worship this over me? Wow, are y'all following me?
Yes.
It's important that we understand. This is why he's going through telling them, because he's, in my opinion, he's saying, look, I looked at you as being a more intelligent people that I brought forth. I looked at you as being a more people that would be more excellent in your choosing and in your choices. But you're going to grab a calf and you're going to make that calf your power. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
There's a problem with that. That's just like saying, I'm gonna make this candy bar, this chocolate bar, my power. I'm gonna sit here and I'm going to talk to it and it's gonna talk back to me. When I get hungry, it's going to feed me, it's gonna give me substance. But when it's gone and you eat it all up, then what do you have? You gotta go buy another power. Silly. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Very foolish of our people, but it is what they do. All right, let's continue to read, please.
8 verses. Verse 10 reads, Where now is your king, that he may save you in all your cities? And the rulers who demanded, saying, Give me a king and leaders. I will give you a king in my anger, and take away a king in my wrath. Ephraim's guilt is preserved, his sin is stored up. Labor pains come on him, he is not a wise son. When the time comes, he will not be born. I will ransom them from the power of Sheol. I will redeem them from death. Death, where are your barbs? Sheol, where is your sting? Compassion is hidden from my eyes. Although he flourishes among his brothers, an east wind will come, a wind from Yahuwah rising up from the desert. His water source will fail, and his springs will run dry. The wind will plunder the treasury of every precious item. Samaria will bear her guilt because she has rebelled against Yahuwah. They will fall by the sword, their little ones will be dashed to pieces, their pregnant women ripped open. Chapter 14. Chapter 14, verse 1. Yahshua, return to Yahuwah your power, for you have stumbled in your sin. Take your word of repentance with you and return to Yahuwah. Say to him, Forgive all our sin and accept what is right, that we may pay you with praise from our lips. And it is so.
Once again, the graphicness of this is not an analogy. This really happened. Are you following? But when we look back at look at what he said in chapter 13 and verse 6. He says they were filled and their hearts were exalted. This is why, and he says, therefore have they forgotten me. This is why we can never afford to allow our hearts to become exalted. Because when you become exalted and you become puffed up in your own pride and in your own knowledge, this is when we forget who truly Abba Yahuwah is. It is a trend. It is something that you can't fight it. If you become puffed up and you become arrogant, you're going to miss it. And you're going to become an enemy to Abba Yahuwah. He said, therefore they have forgotten me. Therefore am I become unto them as a lion, as a leopard will I watch by the way. I will meet them as a bear that beareth, a bear that is bereaved of her whelps, and will rend the enclosure of their hearts. If you've ever seen what a bear does, a bear destroys and rips to shred. We watched this movie, not Revenant. Was it Revenant? It was like an old time movie. I think it was called Revenant. And what ended up happening? This man got attacked by a bear. And let me tell y'all something. When he got attacked by that bear tore him up. It opened up his back. It bit his back open. It bit his arm. It broke his leg, broke his arm. Why? Because the cubs, the whelps were there. And because the cubs was there, they're very territorial. And he was there. And every time that thing thought that he was breathing, that thing was going, biting him, open up his chest, bit his thigh open. And I mean, he really did that man. He really just, that bear, she really tore him up, but he didn't die. So when you start talking about attacking like a bear, you start thinking, boy, that's going to be horrible. And there will I devour them like a lioness. The wild beast shall tear them. You know that when a lioness gets a hold of an animal, she will ride that thing until she brings it down to the ground.
Right.
Yes, she will. We're in Hosea chapter 13, and we're looking at verse 8. And one thing, when a lioness is protecting, or when she is hunting, she is really, that's when she is most vicious. And they will ride something bigger than them down to the ground. I have seen them get on top of wildebeest and ride them to the ground. So when he says, I'm going to tear you like the wild beast, devour you like the lioness, they eat you down to nothing but bones. They don't leave no skin. They just leave you the little meat bones. It is thy destruction, O Yasharal, that thou art against me, against thy help. How now thy king that he may save thee in all thy cities? Once again, it is because they desired to have a king. Thy destruction, the calf idol, has been the cause of your downfall since, but for your help would you have been in me. Thou hast destroyed thyself, for thou hast rebelled against me, thy help. Now, once again, you have to understand, they would prefer to serve a calf than to serve Abba Yahuwah. They wanted a king. Now, listen what he says: a lioness, a leopard. Because they forgot me, I delivered them into the hands of their enemies. A bear that is bereaved. A bear that bereaves, that is a wild bear lying in wait to kill and make men bereaved. Will rend the enclosure of their heart, like a bear that rips open the body to the heart. Another interpretation: their heart, which is enclosed up, will now hearken and will not hearken unto me. So once again, you have to understand, whenever you or even I do something that is contrary, especially introducing and walking in idolatry, we are going to truly make an enemy of Abba Yahuwah.
That's right.
And this is what Ephraim did. They continued to introduce and cause the children of Yasharal to sin because they kept introducing calf worship. Now you have to understand now, to me, that is so ridiculous.
Right.
And it should be to every last one of us. If it ever makes sense to you, that means there's a problem. Are y'all following me? That means there is a major problem. Why? Because that means that we can understand, because we are close behind doing the same thing. So we definitely don't want to do that. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Now, when we look at verse 4, the iniquity of Ephraim is bound up. His sin is laid up in store. The rolls of a traveling woman shall come upon him, or the travailing, of a woman shall come upon him. He is an unwise son, for it is time he should not tarry. In the place of the breaking forth of children shall I ransom them from the power of the netherworld. Shall I redeem them from death? O thy plagues, O death, O thy destruction, O netherworld, repentance be hid from mine eyes. That means they won't be able to repent, and Yahuwah won't accept it because it'll be hidden from his eyes. This is why, once again, it is important that we understand when he wakes us up, the first thing we ought to do is find ourselves in a position to learn about the power that we at one time denied. But many people get up running fast, and you start thinking, where you running to and where you running from? Are y'all following me? Very important for us to understand this, especially with these things. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Very important for us to understand this iniquity of the cows. Same thing, the cows. I have not forgiven or forgotten it, bound up. He is an unwise son. This continues the figure of a travailing woman. After her travail, she bears a foolish son. That is, the later generation have been foolish, refusing to learn from the troubles of their fathers that they had been punished for forsaking Abba Yahuwah, and continued in the same evil way. Once again, it is very important that we do not repeat the same sins that our ancestors and forefathers repeated,
Right.
or which they fell into. Because the moment we do, we find ourselves right in that position to be judged. Are you following? Understand? It's talking about generations. We don't need the generations, our generation or the generation to come after us, to be unwise. For it is time he should not tarry. For a time of trouble is coming when he will not be able to stand in the place. That is, he will not be strong enough to meet the crisis. For if he were wise, he would not tarry, but come forth from the womb immediately. Similarly, if these generations were wise, they would not continue in their sorrows, but will repent and be immediately redeemed. I mean, that's cut and dry. You cannot go. I mean, that's important for us to understand. And you know, when you talk to people, like we heard people's about a month ago. No, I won't say a month. I'm sorry. About a couple of years ago, there was a post on the social media, and like I say, my heart goes out to people that have been hurt. But it was about this brother and his sister, and they were at this park. Now, mind you, they were at this park where it was nothing but Europeans, and there was an altercation that broke out, and the brother stepped in to try to break it up. But the thing that to me should have been an indication that this was a setup is that all these people, these European people, had started gathering around him and his sister, who were the only melanated people at the park. I'd have been ready to go, because my mentality would have been, this is not comfortable. Not that I am uncomfortable around a whole lot of European people, but why are you gathering around me? No, move over and make some room, because you have no reason to come and compass me like you trying to enclose me in. And so two of the guys began to fight, and the brother went to step in to try to break up the fight. And in doing so, guess what happened? The whole mob, the very one he was trying to help, even they turned on him. She was stabbed 17 times. He was stabbed 18 times, punctured her lung. It did something to her spine. They were a mess. And the first thing they said was, y'all, what we need to do is we need to bring exposure to this. Now, mind you, they had already been in the hospital for months. And I told the individual, I said, please do not take this wrong, but they've already been in the hospital months. And when it first happened, they did not get any exposure. And because they did not get any exposure, even if we try to give them exposure, they're not going to do it. They're not going to do it. Now, someone will say, well, why not even try? Because until we all come into the truth and we repent, we're going to suffer.
That's right.
We're going to suffer. You're going to see more of that. Why? Because once again, what did it say unto us? Until they would repent, and they won't repent, they will not be immediately redeemed. Until we repent and turn from our wicked ways, we won't be redeemed. We will continue to find and hear about the tragedies and hear about people falling into sorrow because of that one thing. Because people are not sorry for what they do. People enjoy living in sin. People enjoy living the way they live. That's why they don't want to change.
Right. Right.
It's important that we understand that. Are you following me?
Yes.
Very important. And he ended up getting himself hurt. Actually, him and his sister both, because that mob turned on them. Like I say, these are things that, once again, until our people repent and we be immediately redeemed, we'll continue to find ourselves in this. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
I would have ransomed them, but now I will be thy very words of death or plague. That is, not only will I not ransom you, but I myself will decree your death and destruction. You understand, once again, that's some scary stuff to fold and to listen to and see these things happening. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Yeah. It's important that we understand these things, and you start thinking innocent bystanders are dying, but they're not innocent as we suppose they're innocent. They're innocent because society says they're innocent, but Yahuwah says we're guilty because we break his law daily. Are you following me? Especially when you are not living in it. This is important that we understand that. For though he be fruitful among the reed plants, and east wind shall come, the wind of Yahuwah coming up from the wilderness, and his spring shall become dry, and his fountain shall dry up. Chapter 14, verse 1. Samaria shall bear her guilt, for she hath rebelled against her power. They shall fall by the sword, their infants shall be dashed in pieces, and their women with child shall be ripped up. That's really a, once again, that's a horrible predicament, and that's a horrible place to want to be in. And we've seen these things happen, and we will continue to see them happen until our people wake up and see. And until we repent, change is not going to come. You can march, you can pray, you can fast. You can march and you can hit repeat, that repeat button. But change will not come until we humble ourselves and repent and turn from our wicked ways and accept the instructions of our Yahuwah, his Torah, for our lives. That's the only way things are going to change. And we must do it as a nation, and not as a nation of individual people, but as a nation as a whole. Right. And it is so. Return, O Yahshua, unto the power of thy Savior, for thou hast stumbled in thine iniquity. Take with you words and return unto the Abba. Say unto him, forgive all iniquity and accept that which is great. So will we render for bullocks the offering of our lips. Assure shall not save us. We will not hide or ride upon horses. Neither will we call any more the work of our hands our powers. For in thee the fatherless findeth mercy. Excuse me, findeth mercy. Are you following me?
Yes.
Now we go into verse 5. I will heal their backsliding. I will ahab them freely. For mine anger is turned away from him. I will be as the dew unto Yasharal. He shall blossom as the lily and cast forth its roots, or his roots as Lebanon. His branches shall spread, and his beauty shall be as the olive tree, and his fragrance as Lebanon. They that dwell under his shadow shall again make corn to grow, and shall blossom as the vine. The scent thereof shall be as the wine of Lebanon. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Verse 9 says, Ephraim shall say, what have I to do anymore with idols? That's a question. I'm sure you would ask that after you didn't go through all this. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Very important that we understand. It says, look on him, see the misery, to further his welfare with esteem, instead of hiding my face from him, like a leafy cypress tree, which drops to the ground under its own weight, so that one can easily take hold of it. So is Yahuwah readily accessible to all who seek him. The top of this tree is bent down to its roots. So Yahuwah, although Kadesh and exalted, is with the lowly and contrite. But should you object, the cypress tree does not produce fruit. Then I declare, from me is thy fruit found. In other words, that's what he's saying to us. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
It's very important that we understand that this is found of him and nobody else. Very important. Are you following me?
Yes.
Nobody. Now, let's look at the rest of verse 10. And it says, whoso is wise, let him understand these things. Who is prudent, let him know them. For the ways of Yahuwah are right, and the just do walk in them, but transgressors do stumble therein. So if we are transgressors, we're going to constantly keep stumbling. Are you following me?
Yes.
Now, these things to return to me, the way of Yahuwah, these teachings of the prophet, the way of Yahuwah are right, not as those who say the way of Yahuwah is not equal. For if you repent with a perfect repentance, your former iniquities will not be remembered. The just do walk in them. They will recognize that all his ways are just. Devarim 32:4. When they see the upright man suffering, it may be either because, in fact, he is not as upright in his heart as he appears outwardly, or perhaps he is being chastised for his own power or his own good in this world, so as to enjoy a complete reward in the next. The wicked man who prospers may be enjoying in this world the reward for some deed which he has done, only to be punished in the next for all his evil. Transgressors. Men who rebel against Yahuwah's authority do stumble therein. And this is talking about in verse 10. Through not walking therein, they deny purpose and order in the universe because of the paradox of the righteous suffering and the wicked prospering. And this denial encourages them to walk in their evil ways, which eventually leads them to their downfall. Very important for us to understand. A mouthful, but it is important that we understand. You know, when lawyers go to court, there are times that those cases drag out for years. Or they last, I won't say drag out, they last for years. Why? Because sufficient evidence has to be presented on both sides before they can take it to the jury and say, now you decide. Because if you go prematurely, then guess what happens? You end up losing, and you end up losing the case because you go in ill prepared. Now you have to understand, Yahuwah has a great case against the children of Yasharal. And now it is up for us to comply. We're standing before the King of Kings. We're standing before our judge. Let us not continue to fight against him, but let us humble ourselves and repent and begin to live in the manner that he has chosen us and awakened us to do so.
Right.
It is important that we qualm and we rise and do what he's called us to do. And it is so.
And it is so.
And it is so. All right, we have one more scroll that we will be looking in, and that is the Brit Hadasha, and we'll be looking in Yehukanah, chapter 1. Chapter 1. This is our last book or scroll. Are you following? All right, chapter 1, and we're going to begin at verse 19. And we're going to read, let's read 9 verses, because we have to go all the way to 51. And it is so. And it is so. All right, let's read. And it is so.
Verse 19. Now this was Yehokanan's testimony when the Yehudim of Yasharal sent priests and Levites to ask him who he was. He did not fail to confess, but confessed freely, I am not Mashiach. They asked him, then who are you? Are you Eliah? He said, I am not. Are you the prophet? He answered, no. Finally, they said, who are you? Give us an answer to take back to those who sent us. What do you say about yourself? Yehochanan replied in the words of Yashayahu, the prophet, I am the voice of one calling in the desert, make straight the way of the Mashiach. Now some Pharisees who had been sent questioned him, why then do you immerse if you are not the Mashiach, nor Elijah, nor the prophet? I immerse with water, Yehochanan replied, but among you stands one you do not know. He is the one who comes after me, with whose sandals I am not worthy to untie. This all happened at Bethany, on the other side of the Yarden, where Yehochanan was immersing. And it is so.
And it is so. Now let's look at this verse real quick as we continue to move forward. Now it probably says something different, but in verse 23, Yehochanan says, he said, I am the voice of the one crying in the wilderness, make straight the way of Yahuwah, as said the prophet. Now you have to understand the reason why Yashiyah and is because Yahush came to prepare the way of Yahuwah, not himself. So this is why it is Yahuwah. You know, they always, with the transliteration and all that stuff, they change it up because you don't know who, when you read in the King James Version, you really don't know who he is speaking about. But you have to understand, he was the preparer for Yahuwah. And it is Yahush that came to present Yahuwah unto us, a people that did not know him. Are you following me?
Yes.
Because we were so out of, in touch, and we were so out and distant from this way of life. You know, whatever life you came out of, 9 times out of 10, somebody told you that ain't the right way. Some way, some form, we've heard this. And so it is through Yehochanan preparing the way for Yahuwah. Watch this, so that as Yahush comes, who is he opening the door for? He is opening the door for Yahuwah. So he is the representative of Yahuwah. And so he speaks for Yahuwah. And he also is the one that bridges the gap between us and Yahuwah. And it is so.
And it is so.
All right, let's finish reading. Wait, verse 24. Let's do 9 verses. Verse 24.
Now some Pharisees who had been sent questioned him, "Why then do you baptize if you are not Hamashiach, nor Elijah, nor the prophet? I baptize with water," Yehukanan replied, "but among you stands one you do not know. He is the one who comes after me, with the sandals I am not worthy to untie." This all happened at Bethany on the other side of Jordan, where Yehukanan was baptizing. The next day Yehukanan saw Yahush coming toward him and said, "Look, the Lamb of Yahuwah, who takes away the sin of the world. This is the one I meant when I said, a man who comes after me has surpassed me because he was before me. I myself did not know him, but the reason I came immersing, with water was that he might be revealed to Yashrael." Then Yehukanan gave this testimony: "I saw the Ruach come down from Shemaim as a dove and remain on him."
And it is so. Now, let's look at this. Let's look at verse 31 real quick. Let's go back real quick up here. In verse. Look at verse 29. We'll bring some clarity here. The next Yom, Yehukanan saw Yahush coming to him and said, "Behold, the Lamb of power, which takes away the sins of not the world. Let's go down here and let's see. This is one of those things that they put in there to make us believe that he was coming for the world, which was not. Now, let's look at this in verse 31. "And I knew him not, but that he should be made manifest to Yasharal. Therefore am I come immersing with Mayim." You have to understand, he came to forgive or to do what? For the sins of Yasharal, not the world. But that was a word that they put in there to make you believe that he was coming for everybody.
Right.
When you look at Matthew 15 and 24, he specifically says, "I've come not but for the lost sheep or the prostituting sheep of Yasharal." And this is why when we began to accept it is that he came for us and not everybody else, then we can understand why we go through the stuff we go through.
Right.
Are you following me?
Yes.
Very important for us to understand that. Once again, he came for Yasharal and not the world. Verse 31, when you look at, once again, let's look at that verse 20. Look at verse 29, isn't it? Yes, verse 29 and 31. Just want to make sure I see it right. Verse 29, and then step down another, past verse 30 and go to 31, and you began to see that this was the purpose of Yehukanan, to reveal to Yasharal the Mashiach, and the Mashiach was here to do what? To take away the sins of Yasharal and not the world. Not the world. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
And this is why it is important that we see this, so that we are not walking around quoting John 3:16, "For Abba Yahuwah so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whosoever believe in him shall be what? Shall be saved." Now you have to understand, he's not talking about the world. He is talking about who? Yasharal. Can't put everybody in there. That's trying to make everybody wear the same size shoe. It don't work.
Right.
You following me? All right, let's read. 32. I'm sorry, 33.
"I would not have known him, except that the one who sent me to baptize with water told me,
Mhm.
the man on whom you see the Ruach come down and remain is he who will baptize with the Ruach HaKodesh. Have, have seen and I testify that this is the son of Yahuwah.
Mhm.
The next day, Yehukanan was there again with two of his disciples. When he saw Yahush passing by, he said, look, the Lamb of Yahuwah. When the two disciples heard him say this, they followed Yahush, turning around. Yahush saw them following and asked, what do you want? They said, Rabbi, where are you staying? Come, he replied, and you will see. So they went and saw where he was staying, and spent that day with him. It was about the 10th hour. Andrew, Shimon, Kepha's brother, was one of the two who heard what Yehukanan said, and who had followed Yahush. The first thing Andrew did was to find his brother Shimeon and tell him, we have found the Mashiach, and he brought him to Yahush. Yahush looked at him and said, you are Shimon, son of Yehukanan, who will be called Cephas. And it is so.
And it is so. Now, once again, let's look at verse 42. Now, let's look, once again, one of the greatest things that they could have ever encountered was to be able to deal with the Mashiach um, up close and personal. And that's why when they were able to converse with him, that was one of the things that students would always ask a teacher, a more or a mora, where are you? And that gave them opportunity to come and learn from them. Okay.
Yes.
Now, when we look at verse 42, let's look at verse 42 because this is another thing that we need to check out too. And he brought him to Yahush, and when Yahush looked at him, he said, you are Shimeon, the son of Yonah. You shall be called Kepha, Peter, which is interpreted a pebble, which is not true. Okay?
Yes.
Now, the meaning of Kepha is not pebble in Hebrew. And the word in Aramaic for a pebble or stone is Sepha or Sepha. It does not mean a rock either. In Hebrew, the word Kepha has a few interesting meanings. The short word Kephira for young lion. The word kippah, derived for head covering, also the word atonement derives from this word. Yahush would have called him a young lion and not a stone. Since kippah is from Yehuda, this makes more sense, keeping our Hebraic hat on and removing the Roman Greek hat. The term kippah is derived, or Peter, I'm sorry, is derived in English and not the name of kippah at all. So these are things that were slid into there. And if we don't look at it carefully, guess what will happen? We will begin to accept it and we'll begin to call him this, and this is not him. All you gotta do is really look at the life of Keeper, and you see that he was a lion. He was one that was very bold,
Yes.
and he spoke what was ever on his mind. And so this is important, once again, that we look at these things in the right perspective. All right, let's finish reading. Mhm.
Verse 43. On the following day, Yahush wished to go to Galilee, and found Philip and said to him, follow me. And Philip was from Beth Saida, the city of Andri and Kepha. Philip found Nathanael and said to him, we have found him whom Moshe wrote of in the Torah, and the prophets, Yahush of Nazareth, the son of Joseph. Verse 6. And Nathanael said to him, is it possible for any good man to come out of Nazareth? Philip said to him, come and see. Yahush saw Nathanael coming toward him and said of him, see, truly a Yasharite in whom is no deceit.
Mhm.
Nathanael said to him, from where do you know me? Yahush answered and said to him, before Philip called you, when you were under the fig tree, I saw you.
Mhm.
Nathanael answered and said to him,
Rabbi, you are the son of power. And he said to him, truly, truly, I say to you, from now on you shall see the Shemaim open and the messengers of power ascending and descending upon the son of Adam. It is so.
And it is so. All right, let's look at two things real quick. Let's look at the fig. Nathaniel said to him, how do you know me? Yahush answered and said to him, because you got to understand, it's like, okay, wait a minute. Now you have to understand, he's not talking about a physical fig etzer. He saw him. This is referring to the Torah. Now, under the fig is descriptive of someone who studies Torah. The fig is the picture of the national or nation of Yasharal in full Torah obedience. The figs on the tree are the different commandments in the Torah. So Nathaniel being under the fig means under the obedience of Torah, hence why he recognized the Mashiach was the son of Yahuwah. Because he recognized, you start thinking, no, it's not that, in other words, you saw something that nobody else was able to see. And this is how he acknowledged that he was the son of Yahuwah. Now, when he looks at this designation of rabbi, when he calls him rabbi, and he said, Nathaniel answers and said to him, Rabbi, you are the son of Yahuwah. You are the king of Yasharal. Once again, why? Because he went into that secret place. He went into that private place of his time of studying. Now, for those that will constantly come against the renewed covenant, not the New Testament, but the renewed covenant, which is the extension of the first covenant. This is how we know that they had a platform they built upon, because this man here was a Torah believer. Are you hearing me? And this is what he based his walk upon. So for people that's saying that Yahush basically came and was out of order and he wasn't real and that Rabbi Shaul messed up everything, we don't understand how people have come and basically did a disservice to the writings because of misinterpretation. And yes, and if you read the King James Version and you constantly read it, yes, you're going to be all jacked up. Because it's going to follow along the lines and the teaching of Christianity, right, which we as a people are not supposed to follow under. Now, once again, it's important that we understand this. He is talking to him and he calls him rabbi, which is to make it known that he was one to come, the Mashiach. This designation of rabbi was of the one to come, the Mashiach, the teacher of Yasharal, who would correct the doctrines of men. Nathaniel recognized him through the Ruach HaKodesh. And so it is important that we understand that in that time, they did not have what we are presented now, which is the renewed covenant. Right. But they had the Torah, and this is how they were able to build the renewed covenant and show us step by step. Some things are letters to other congregations showing us the things that took place and the things that were built up, the things that were torn down. So we don't doctrinalize it, but we do use it as an example. Right. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
We use it as an example. And so it's very important for us to understand these things. And so once again, it's important that we understand that. Okay, this person has a question. I've been asking what Bible should I use other than the King James. There are, what is it, the blue, what is the other one that we use, the blue, that you all say that's great to use also? The Elijah scriptures?
This one now is the next thing, the Torah.
This one?
Yes.
All right. This one right here is the better one. The Nazarene version. Can you see it? I'll make sure. Take that, put that close. Don't lose my place. Put your finger right there. All right. That is one. Okay. This is one that is great to use. Now, you have to look for, because in some places, I think, what is it? Not eBay, what is it? Amazon? Yeah. Amazon is really ridiculous. You don't want to go there because they will make you think, well, no, I'm not buying it, because they have it up there for $3,000, I think, dollars. But there are other places like, I believe, eBay, And other if you type it in, I believe it'll give you the places where you can order it. But this is the one really that people are going to, because some of the other ones are really questionable. Okay, what's the name again? All right, no problem. The name is it? Yeah, type it in. Not Sarin, R-I-N version. SARIN version. This is one that I believe is great. Yeah, the King James version, no, I don't recommend that. You are welcome. I do not recommend that, and the reason I don't is because when you really begin to read it and go through it, and once you are able to get your hands on a a Bible that will be able to help you with the names and so forth, and you parallel it with the King James version, you will see there's so many things that have been altered, changed, and substituted. And as long as we continue to follow in that way, it makes it very hard to really find ourselves conforming to His truth and to His way. But once again, it's always important to fast and pray, even with this, and to uh, um, uh, yeah, it's always important to have. Now, I would say it's a larger Bible, but if you like we are, it doesn't, size is no factor in it. Take it wherever you need to do. um, yeah, they did. They replaced the word Passover with Easter. And so you really don't want that because we don't celebrate Easter. That's a pagan holiday and so forth and so on. So yeah, they did a job on the King James Bible. But this is one I carry with me. I take it with me. I have a bag that I put it in and I take it with me. It is important to have with you. And I color in mine. So, I know a lot of people say, I ain't gonna make it a color book. Well, I have marked mine up because this is my life, and I need to be able to mark stuff and be able to go right back to it. So, with that being said, I pray, and I know it will minister to you as it has ministered to me and continues to minister to us as His people. Um, and so I pray that you will be able to find it. Yeah, I pray that you will be able to find it and that it will Baruch you just as much as it has Baruch me and Baruch all of us. Once again, I want to say to you, Todah, for tuning in and being with us, for all of you that have stuck and stayed with us for our second portion of our Shabbat class. And as we have come to the close, I want to say to you, keep your head up, keep your shoulders squared, and keep your heart and your feet in and upon the Torah, because you can't go wrong. I am Aliyah Yasharal, and I am the leader of Messengers of Yahuwah's Kingdom of Break Belief Ministries, located in South Carolina. I want you to remember here at Messengers of Yahuwah's Kingdom of Break Belief Ministries, this is the place where the Torah does the body excellent. Until next time, may Abba Yahuwah Baruch Atah and keep you in His shalom until we meet again. Also, I want you to remember that you've been touched by Champion TV, a place where the champions reside, and it is so. And it is so.